getting the network layer set up, repository layer set up, and we were able to get the basic fundamental layer for application. And now on, we will be focusing on in more detail, in more depth, actually. So if you have any confusion, if you have any doubts, better if you guys clear that at least by now. Otherwise, what we are trying to implement after this is gonna get more confusing, because we'll be going to more advanced topics, advanced things right after this. So let's if you guys can remember, what we have covered so far is we have MVVM application which we have done network call using retrofit, and we have a view model which talks to the repository, at least the network layer, and get some data, and we are giving away that data using live data. So we were able to get the one-way direction of the data collection. And the next things that we're going to be talking about in this series is going to be regarding more advanced stuff. To move on to the next steps, there are certain elements that we need to introduce into this application. Okay, so it's going to be a little bit awkward or a little bit strange or new, depending on how you see it. Based on your knowledge or expertise on some of the concepts that I am about to discuss, you will find it is a little bit of different than what we approach normal application. So we will first talk about the concepts, then we will introduce the codes itself. So the first concept that I would like to introduce, this is somewhat familiar in not in also mobile world, but also in web applications as well. So the concept that we're going to be looking in today is dependency injection. So anyone have here heard the term dependency injection? What it does, or what's the purpose of having a dependency injection? Okay, Prasan is there. So Prasan, can you explain to the class, or maybe for everyone, what do you understand by dependency injection, or we call DI on here onwards. So what's DI is for, and what is its advantages and what is its disadvantages?
We use it to loosely couple dependencies to the program.
Okay.
Like injecting the dependency.
Exactly. So most of you guys have seen the seen something like let's say where I can find. Okay, so most of you guys might have seen when we want to call something, when we want to use some cases, so we need to initiate it. Okay, so for example, in our view model, okay, we use the view model provider, and we using this view model provider, it's create a new view model for us. Okay, main view model. Okay, so in here it is a little bit abstracted for us, or at least hidden for us. We need to create, if you want to use a view model in our application, we need to instantiate a new object out of it. Okay, in this case, main view model object. So in the same scenario, let's assume we want to create another view model. Okay, perhaps we want to send some data to the main view model. We need to use the same view model in another different place rather than the main fragment. We want to use this main view model in a different section in order to communicate or do something like that. So to do that, we have to then again go here and select a view model, and from there we have to get the data, and we have to do the instantiation. We might need to create a new object and so on and so forth. So what from dependency injection, what it does is, rather than we creating objects all over the application, we will be using a dependency injection tool to manage these needs. Okay, so for example, we will create one instance of this view model in a central place or what we call a dependency injection page, and we will be using that created instance all over the places or wherever we need it, using simple injection principles. Okay, so we create once and we can inject within our code anywhere we like. Okay, so the most popular dependency injection that you will find these days. Can you see my screen?
So the Android Studio is great.
Okay, that's it. I got power lost. I don't know why. So within the application itself, we'll be using a dependency injection tool. Okay, so if you are coming from web framework like Spring, the dependency injection is built into Spring. Okay, if you are coming from front-end frameworks like Angular, the service injection does the same thing by creating services for us. So different implementation are available on different frameworks, different language, but the concept and the concepts and the way of doing it, it's moreover the same, but depending on the language features, depending on the framework, the underlying mechanism can be different. Okay, so we don't need to worry about the underlying mechanism that much. All we need to worry about is how the framework or the application is sorry framework or programming language support dependency injection. So anyone have seen dependency injection in action in Android? Anyone knows a particular library or a particular way of doing that? Perhaps you guys have heard about it. Not sure. Anyone have how to do it in Android context? Okay. Oh. Okay. So nobody have, yes, I suppose. So in Android, what you can do is there were a tool called Dagger. Okay, Dagger is one of the most popular one available in the market in terms of dependency injection for Android at least. But what Google does is they come on to play, and they took the Dagger implementation and they come up with own implementation, or let's say Dagger 2 in the sense, or Dagger fork, we can say. So Dagger fork came into something called hilt. Okay, so hilt is a wrapper around or extension for Dagger, somewhat say, but hilt has become one of the major dependency injection framework for Android. So we'll be looking at hilt as of now, because a lot of applications, they are moving from dagger to hilt because hilt has free potential than what we will see in dagger. Okay, let's see how we can get hilt into our application. It's really simple. There are like a couple of steps that you need to take, but once hilt is added to your application, you can easily work with it. Okay, so there are, if you go to the dependency injection documentation that you will find in Android, I'll share the link within the group itself, so you guys can have a look around it. So we will follow these steps, and let me explain what when we are doing, why we are doing this, and what is the reason behind it. So, of course, hilt is a third-party tool, a third-party library that is not coming out of the box for applications. So we need to edit. So first thing that you need to do is you have to edit in your project level, okay, or plugin level. So I will go to the build.gradle file that is in my root, in the project file, not the module, in the project file. First I have to introduce dagger. Okay, so I will introduce it right around here. Okay, since I am using what do you call build Gradle with this, I just have to import it in here. Let me sync it now, so it will take a little bit time. And for the other our module, if you want to use it within the module itself, we will have to do some more more things in here as well. So we have to add the ID in here as well as a plugin to our application. We'll do that as well. So we have the plugin in here. I think we better go with simple. Otherwise, it will give some errors I have seen while we are using single quotation instead of double. Let's give some time. He'll create a plugin website, but try again. Google has to do let's give it one more time. Hilt Android Gradle plugin is applied, but no Hilt dependency found. Let's close this for a second. My phones. Yeah. Let's see what Google has to say. So it's in the dependency. You might need KAP. Okay, I think I know. Kotlin cat also should be there. Let's see once again. Let's try to prove it. Yeah, I have. Oops. So I no longer need KT. I think I have. Yep. Google Dagger Hilt Android. Let's see whether it is the correct one. Let's give it a try. Download to Android dependencies was not found. Let's see whether we have other dependencies to add. I think let's add a few more dependencies so it will go away. So we have the plugin, and on the dependencies, I think I have to add the dependencies as well. So I will add dependencies around here. I'll say hilt dependencies. Okay. So we have hilt 2.4 version, and then there is one thing we call these KPT generating, allow generating types. That means we will be generating some code based on the annotations that we're going to be using. So the KPT, correct conversion error types, this helps us to get rid of any errors that we are coming across. Okay, I think it should be working right now. So those are the dependencies hurdle that we need to get over with. Well, remember, this is like one-time thing that you are using in order to do within your project. Okay, but you should know, okay, where to find if there is an error with dagger or hilt, where you will find the configuration and where you need to change and all. Okay, let's move on. Still the application is coming around. So one other thing is that we need to know that when we are applying dependency injection, the application itself should know about hilt presence. Okay, so when we are developing an application within our module that we are right around here, so you guys have seen the initialization of activity at the first. Okay, so you get most of the time when we are developing an Android application, we first go with the activity approach. Okay, so the activity is kind of what we consider as the starting point for our module or our application that we have run. But in reality, there is a hidden application that is available within our code base itself. So it is not an activity that we should target. We should have an application. Okay, so by default, you won't see this application. It is hidden from us, or it is automatically taken care of by the Android ecosystem. But in this scenario, we have to make sure, okay, we will be using dependency injection, so we need to make sure our application knows about it. So we have to create, or we have to override that scenario. We have to create an application class. Okay, so we will create application class. We will be using something called we will be inheriting something called application. To avoid confusion, the name will be something like MVVM application. Okay, just to make sure we are not confusing anything. Yes, add it to Git. That's okay. And with this class, we have to extend the application class. Okay, so you can see that application is one of the core built-in Android classes. We have to extend that. Okay, And by doing this, it is like we are taking the control of our application launch time into our hands. Okay, by default you don't need this, but since we are introducing dependency injection, we need within this our application. Okay, all right. So let me see whether there are missing part. Okay, all right. All right. Next thing that we would be doing is the Gradle is still syncing up. The most hardest thing. All right. Let's move on with the application, but there are certain things that we need to do if we have changed the application in our the default application we have changed. So we have to do some modification in our manifest level. Okay, the first thing is that you need to do, so you know that we can introduce a class like this, but it does not contain, okay, this is going to be the starting point. You should use this my MVVM application as the starting point. So what we have to do is we have to go to the manifest, and you will see that now we had using the activity section around here. So if we want to introduce a new activity, we would be doing that. Now you get to see something called the application in here. Okay, so this is the class which is responsible for creating the application if we have not provided one. Okay, now since we have provided one, what should happen is we should say, okay, even though you have your own application, now we are overriding it, we are taking it into our hand, or we are simply modifying it a little bit. So what we have to do is we have to give the name attribute and pass on the application or the class name that we are having as the name for this XML file. So this is important. If you forget about this, what will happen is this is no longer valid, or this is not going to work as we expected. So make sure if you are taking the application class into your hand, you had to update the manifest in here. Okay. All right. Next thing that we need to do is most of the time these applications, these dependency injections goes around with some things we call annotations. Okay, so perhaps you guys have seen annotation in web applications, Spring, Java, most of the time those are annotation driven. So we have the same luxury or same comfort in our applications with at least with Android and Hilt. We can say, okay, using annotations like Hilt Android app. Okay, so this indicate, okay, we are taking control over our application, and once we have done it, Hilt, we give a hint, or we give some metadata for Hilt. Okay, this is going to be the starting point for. So if you are doing your voodoo, if you are doing your magic by injecting things, doing handling dependent injection, okay, this is the application that we should do, or this is the application where you should start. Okay, that is one thing that we need to do. So we have to annotate this as Hilt Android application. If you don't like, you can remove these brackets as well. That's why I love Kotlin. They try to get minimal effort to in order to make the code very beautiful, but sometimes it's confusing. Okay, this is a class where the implementation you won't find, but if you know the tricks, you know you can remove those things. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is introducing the Hilt for the application. Next thing that we have to do is we have to introduce this for the entry point or uh, um, injection starting. Okay, so most of the time application is like the setuping point. Okay, and when we want to inject for the other places, such as in our activity, so going down the line, this is the introduction for the hilt to take over the application. And we can say, okay, so when we are working with hilt, okay, this is going to be the main entry point for your application. So we have to introduce another annotation, Android entry point. Okay, so you can see those things are coming from Android hilt. In that way, what you will do is, this is an introduction, or like saying, okay, when you are doing your dependent injection, make this as the entry point for your application. Okay, so there are a couple of other things that we will look into, especially with view model, fragments, and views. Right now, if we are like looking into activity only, you can use this Android endpoint. Okay, so there are and remember, there are certain what do you call limitation with dependency injection. Not everywhere that you will find yourself, you can have hilt around it. Hilt is supported only in view models, activities, fragments, views, services, and broadcast receivers. Okay, so there are certain places that you can inject using hilt. Not everywhere, every class that you like or everything that you want to, it will be supported by hilt. Okay, so we will look into how we can hilt bindings in our application later on. Okay, so yeah, so we will go into our context or our application, and we will see how hilt is applicable in our domain or our scenarios. Okay, so yeah, let's go with we have introduced hilt, that is done. And yes, and next thing that we need to do is we need to do some changes. Or we need to introduce at least some of our dependency injections to the application itself. So you know that we have several things that we like to share within the application. For example, this retrofit service, and there is this room DAO. Okay, these are things that we can share across our application. So we'll see how we can do that within the application using hilt. Okay, the first thing that you need to do is you need to define something called modules. Okay, so we can define different modules based on the dependency injection that we like to have. So for example, say for instance, we need dependency injection based on the database. So we will say, okay, we will create a module out of what do you call this, hilt, and we will be using it all around the application. Okay, so we will see how we can do that first. So we have these database access layer, and we will convert this we will convert this section into a what do you call a hilt module. Okay, So we will create another directory under this main dir, this main package. We will call this di for representing dependency injections. Okay, so we'll be creating a dependency injection module for database. So I will create another class, a Kotlin class. I will I name this database module. Okay, so first thing that you need to do is it's going to be in type object. Okay, it's not going to be a class in sense, and we have to introduce some of the annotations or built-in annotations that supports hilt modularization. Okay, so first thing is we need to say, okay, this is going to be a module from dagger itself. As I mentioned, it's like the hilt is based on dagger, so it supports dagger annotations. So you don't have to invent all the things again and again. And the next thing is we have to say where to install it in. Okay, we have notation called install in. Okay, and we have to say singleton component. Yeah, this one, singleton component class. Okay, so in this annotation, what we are trying to achieve is that it's saying orange point. Okay, so this is to indicate where dependency injections in hilt or in Android, there is a speciality going on. There are dependency injection frameworks such as in what do you call web frameworks and all those things. Dependency injection happens on the run. Okay, or on the run in the sense if you compile it and when you are trying to run it, the dependency injection happens. But in hilt, what happens is the dependency injection happens in code generation time. That means in compile time it happens. So in order to happen, in order to make these things happen, the code should be available. Okay, the dependency injection, whatever we are going to do with dependency injection, if we are trying it compile time, the code should be generated. Code should be available. Okay, so these annotations, by using this annotation, we give hint. Okay, while we are compiling the application, while we are injecting these components here and there, use this annotation to get some heuristic or get some idea on how to generate the code and where to inject these things, where to generate these things. So in this section or in this annotation, it says, okay, we are creating a hilt module. And in this install in, we say, okay, when we are creating a dependency or when we are creating instance, use the singleton component, which is in a class. If you go to the singleton class and register the dependency in here. Okay, so these are like generating these will help on generating the class. So but you guys don't need to really know into these things, but to get an idea what's going on behind the curtain, this might be helpful. Okay, so we will just use this, but remember why we are using this, what it stands for. That helps a lot when you are debugging or when you are trying to understand in full. Okay, so what we need to do is then we have to come up with something called providers. Okay, the provider is where we create the instance. Okay, so for example, we want to create a database instance. Okay, as you can see, if you go to the room section, we have a method called get context, and we provide the context into here, and we will get a single instance of our application. So in here, if you refer, if you call room.getDatabase, you will get a database instance. Okay, and you guys can see that we are using this synchronizer method. That means by synchronizing this method, what will assure is that it will give us only one instance of the database. Okay, we are returning one instance of the database, not more than that. So we are creating this room database only one instance. Okay, but now since we don't need to manually handle these things or anything like that, we can ask to create, we can ask hilt to give us a database instance. So we won't be using this anymore. We'll be asking hilt to give us an instance. Okay, so we can do it by defining a function, a basic function. Since these are called providers, we normally start with provide database. Okay, so the naming convention goes like provide database. So that's in that way we know, okay, this is going to be a provider function, and it will gonna be providing us a database instance. Okay, so in this scenario, what we have to do is we have to pass some callbacks and database initializations. So we have the application instance that should be there, otherwise we can't instantiate. Then we have something called callbacks. If you can remember, in here we have the okay, the callback is actually within the class. So we get the application context, and we need to provide the database class in here. We will be returning, or we will be creating an instance of videos database. So we will be returning that in here. So the instance will be something like this. Let me, okay. We need always forget it. This geo so we need a callback. So what we have to do is we have to find a callback in here. Let me go to the video database. Give me a second. Okay, we will go with the callback implementation in here like this. Let me explain one by one. Import, inject. We have to say provider and the video database. We will going to put it in scope, and we will be in the application. Application scope. We have to create an application. Okay, we'll get to the okay. All right. So we'll be needing few things: the callback and the application scope. We will get onto that. First, we will finish this. So we will need a callback. Callback is coming from video database callback. This is going to be our callback when we are initiating. And let me get a couple of codes, then I can explain. Okay. So now the ultimate goal within this provider, it is going to be creating it is going to be creating us a video database instance. So if you guys can remember, in here, we have the same thing. We have the video database instance. If you hover over this, you can see that is the instance of video database. So we'll be replacing this, okay, rather than we are creating these instance by our hand. We will give the instantiation for hilt to handle. Okay, now when we are doing that, so we need to return a normal we need to return a video database. So the initialization is going to be same. We can use this room database builder, whatever the context and what is the class, and what is the name of the class, and so on and so forth. Okay, so we will be using this, the same thing. Okay, let me copy this. Go to the database. This is so many files I need to get rid of. Database module. Okay, here. So we will be giving we'll be creating the room create database, and we have to provide the context. So the context is coming from our application itself. Application where this thing is where it should belongs. The application is the context that we have to provide. So we can get the application context by simply referring to the application instance that we are providing in here. Okay, let me get some. Oops. Okay. All right. So we have how do I format this thing? I don't remember. Can't remember how to format it, but anyhow, what we have to do is we have to create a room database builder. We have to provide the application context and what is the instance that we will be building, and we have to call the build method. Okay, so there are a few other things that we need to do, and those are really with the fallback to destructive on migration. Okay, so if you're trying to migrate, if you fall, it will be going back, and we have to add a callback. A callback is what we have seen in here. So the callback mainly involved in here is that once this is initialized, once this is created, the callback will be executed, or the callback will be invoked. Okay, so let's go once again with this implementation. So we will be creating a new database instance, okay, as we have seen in room. So in order to create that, we need an application context, and we will need we don't need a callback, but we will be providing a callback. So once this is created, the callback will be executed or invoked. Okay, so after this function is executed, it should return a database type. In our scenario, videos database will be provided. Okay, and in order to create that, it's a simple thing. Room database builder, we provide the context, we provide the database class which is responsible for creating, and the database name itself, what will happen if the migration falls, and once it is called, once everything is done, the room database is set up, what the callback method in this scenario, the one we have provided in here, will get invoked, and the build method is simply building the application. Okay, so this is how we create an instance of the database. Now we don't need this thing, but remember one thing that you guys have seen in here is that sorry, the database instance in this scenario is a singleton. Okay, singleton. Why? Because every time somebody is asking for the database, you can't create a new instance and give it back. Okay, that's why the synchronization happens, and after the synchronization is completed, we will get the instance. Okay, so we are make suring by using this synchronization method that only one database instance is created. So that should also apply within our dependency injection as well. Otherwise, it will fail. So in order to make sure this application, this instance, the providing database, the instance of video database is going to be one single instance. We have an annotation called singleton. Okay, so singleton annotation will make sure that only one instance of video database is created. Okay, pretty much simple. You don't have to use the synchronization and everything. The hilt itself will take care of that. Okay, and one other thing is that we need to make sure that this video database is created, or it is once we have created this, okay, it is injectable for somewhere else. Okay, that means by annotating this singleton, it's only indicate, okay, make one copy, okay, or one single instance throughout the application, but it does not say, okay, you can inject this everywhere. Okay, in order to make this injectable, okay, you have to take this video database and inject somewhere else. You need to make sure another annotation is called provides. Okay, so provides make sure that this video database instance, this created instance is injectable anywhere we like. Okay, so how do we know that this instance is going to be injected? Okay, that is done by the class name. Okay, we can see that videos database has the class name. The class name is considered as the injection point. So anywhere, if you are trying to inject a video database within our application, this instance will be returned to that. That's the basic concept. Okay, so we in order to make sure this is injectable somewhere, that means this is going to be used somewhere else. If you want to make sure this is going to be injected somewhere else, you have to at least provides annotation. Otherwise, it won't be injectable. Okay. All right, that's clear. Few things up, but there are certain other things that we need to cover. So if you guys can see that in this provide database, the application context, how we're going to provide this. So within this, when hilt is generating codes, okay, when hilt is generating the dependent injection, when they are trying to resolve everything, it's need to provide a video database. But in order to provide a video database, it needs this application context. Okay, the callback is something that is already there. It's a static method, so it won't get affected. But we need this application. Otherwise, what will happen? This will fail. Why it is failing? We are trying to create a video database, but when this singleton is about to create, the application is not there, not somewhere to be found. So what we need to do is we need to provide this application context as well. Let's see how we can do that. So we will create something called application provider. Okay, we simply call it a new file. Let's go with the Kotlin class file. We call it, it's going to be a dependent injection. and it's going to call app module. Okay, so we have something called an app module. So it's going to be an object as well, and it's going to be a module as we have seen, and where it's going to be instantiated. So installs in singleton component. Okay, this is it's we are going to be instantiating, and we need to come up with something called application scope. Okay, so application scope, we will create this like this, retaliation. Oops. Okay, so we will be creating something called the application scope. Okay, we will get into that a little bit. Right now, we will have the application scope annotation right around here. We will see where we can be using this. So basically, what we are doing is we are creating an annotation called application scope. Okay, you can see that before the class declaration or class syntax, we have mentioned something called an annotation. That means we are creating an annotation. We are creating something like this. At qualifier, like that, we are creating a simple annotation called application scope. Okay, we'll see how we will be using that. But right now, what we have done is we have used this application scope within our application, within our database entry. Okay, let's not get really confused on this. We will see what is the application coroutine, application scope and everything. Right now, we will just go with the implementation. Then I will work each and every one right after one another. Okay, so next thing that we will be using is this provide application scope. That means we will be creating an application scope. So to create that, it's the same scenario that we have done. We are creating a provider and a singleton, and the scope of our application is somewhat called, we'll be using the coroutine scope. So anyone have any idea on coroutines? What do you understand by coroutines? Anyone have heard the term coroutines? Okay, so if you are anyone have heard the term threads? I think most probably you guys have heard in operating systems. Threads, anyone? Only Pasa? Yes, so a thread, if you guys know, in different languages, they have, we call these mini processes. Okay, a thread is considered as a small process that is running apart from the main execution. Okay, so in Java, you will find threads. We call those things virtual threads by mimicking software based mini processes. So in order to execute something out of the main execution flow, you will use a thread. And once a thread is spawned, you can run whatever the code that you like. And when the code is execution completed, you can get a callback and get the result from that thread. So earlier on, if you guys can remember, in Android, we have the same thing. We have the main thread. Okay, in Java, I'm talking purely on Java. In Java as well, if you can remember, we have something called threads. when the UI is created, UI is running on the main thread. So if you guys can remember, if you try to execute a network call in the main thread, the application crash. Why? You are not allowed to do blocking request on the main thread. Main thread is only responsible for showing you the UI or whatever the view that you are seeing in the main screen. So if you're trying to do a blocking request like network request, database request, the application will crash saying you are not allowed to do any sort of network blocking request on the main thread. So probably you guys have used asynchronous task or a thread in order to get around and get the work done on the background. So that is in the Java world. In Kotlin world, you will find coroutines. Okay, coroutine is somewhat similar to threads in Java, but there are a little bit of difference on that. So I will give you exercise or assessment to further study coroutines. Okay, coroutines is a very interesting subject. It's completely new world and completely fascinating stuff. So you guys learn, give me a comprehensive study on coroutines. What is coroutines? What type of coroutine types are there? What depending on execution places, there are different coroutine types, and so on and so forth. So do a thorough study on coroutine, and we will look into coroutine later on. So what we have done in here, let me explain. So we will be creating a scope. We'll be running some of our code in a different coroutine scope. That means in a different thread kind of thing. Okay, so we will be running that in a new coroutine scope, and we will be using this application scope in order to inject. That means when we are creating this coroutine scope, it will be running on the main application scope. Okay, so it will create a coroutine scope. That means it will create a sub process, but it is going to be diverting from the application scope. Okay, we will get into more in when we are working with these things. You will get an idea. Right now, remember, we are just using these things. Once these things are glued together, everything is glued together, you will get an idea in thoroughly. Okay, so that's done, and I think application should break by now, because we have removed the room database support. Created build is running. Not sure why. Okay, let's keep it running, and we will inject a few other things while we are doing this. So we have created the module for database creation. Now you don't have to worry about singleton and everything. All are done for us by using a simple annotation. Okay, and the provide is also the same. We can inject this anywhere else. Let's see how we can inject. And there are some other aspects that I would like to make injectable, especially with the API calls that we are making, at least retrofit. Okay, we will create the retrofit. There you go. You have this retrofit, and we will make sure we will also create this retrofit instance. Also what do you call also injectable. Okay, so we will create a new Kotlin class. Let's follow along as much as we can. So we'll be creating, we have created a database module, and we have created an application module. Now we will be creating what we call API module. okay, or retrofit, whatever you like. I will call API module. Okay, so as you guys can remember, first thing first, make sure it is an object. Have the module annotation indicating this is a dagger module. The next thing is it's going to be installed in singleton component. Okay, this is like the basic for the API module that we are going to be using. Okay, so we have the retrofit service, and we will be creating a retrofit builder. Okay, we will be having a retrofit instance. This is going to be a type of retrofit. Okay, so we know what to create. Okay, we know what to create. I will say get function provide retrofit. Okay, so this is our intention. We need to create a retrofit instance. Okay, and it will be returning a retrofit. So if you guys go here, and you can see that we are returning a retrofit. That is simple. So we can simply copy this, go to that module, and we will be returning this. Now what we have done is we have create a retrofit instance using hilt, and if you want to use retrofit in any place, we just have to inject this. But in order to make sure this is injectable and it is not affecting somewhere else, what we have to do is we have to make sure annotate it provides, and since the retrofit instance that we are using, it's going to be what you call a singleton. The instance is going to be singleton, and you have to make annotation, and you have to make the retrofit instance as singleton as well. Okay, you can have different instantiations, but the best approach is to make it singleton. All right, and we have done everything in here, and sorry, and the next thing, it's part of what we have going to be doing is we'll be creating this retrofit service, so we no longer need this. Okay, so we'll be creating instance of Dev service. Okay, so you can see that if we want to get an instance, if you want to use this Dev service, what we have to do is Dev network dot Dev, and you will get the instance of Dev service. You can see that when we are creating, when we provide retrofit, create, and the service that we are interested in, we will get a Dev service. Now what we're going to do is, instead of creating this manually, we will use retrofit to do that. Okay, I'm going to break everything right now by deleting, because there was references. Now all of those things should be broken. You go to view model. Now you can't just inject, you can't just use Dev network and get playlist. This is no longer working. Why? I have deleted that, and it is no longer working. All right. Now what I have to do is I have to create an instance of this Dev service and inject into our view model. Okay, we have to inject. Now before we inject, we need to have a Dev service. Let's go back into our API module. Okay, now we can create a Dev service. Okay, we can say provide. We need a Dev service. So we normally go with the naming convention. So we need a Dev service. So we within our API module, we say provide Dev service, and what we have to do is return a dev byte service. We will import that. Now the problem arises. How do we create it? So it was really simple, and we go back here. Let me undo here. So to create a dev byte service, we have to just call retrofit create, right? But now the problem arises. Now the problem arises is we don't have a retrofit in here. Okay, in order to call that, we need the retrofit in here. So if you guys look right about here, you have a retrofit instance. So what I can do is I can say retrofit, and I can say retrofit create, and the service I am interested is dev byte service class.java. Okay, so I can so I need retrofit in order to create a dev byte service. Retrofit create, then I pass the service name, then and only I can get a dev byte service. But in order to create a dev byte service, I need retrofit. Okay, but if I do like this, if I say, okay, I need retrofit and pass it in around here, only way that I am getting a retrofit instance if I have registered it as a provider. Okay, so if I register this as a provider, then whenever this provide dev byte service come in and it is looking for a retrofit, it will be provided by this. So this retrofit builder will be inject into here. Okay, so in order to that is how the dependent injection works. So if I need a retrofit service or retrofit instance, I need to make an instance of it. Then anywhere that I have this at provides at singleton, anywhere that I have used this or inject, we'll see the inject annotation later on. This will be provided by this instance. Okay, makes sense? Do you guys need any explanation? I can explain it again. It's a bit confusing, I know. Anyone need the explanation again? Raise your hand. Yeah, sure. So our ultimate goal is to get a dev byte service. Okay, using this dev byte service, we can call the APIs. Okay, we have these APIs like this to call the get playlist service. We need a dev byte service. Earlier on, what we have done is we create this object class, and statically we create a dev byte service by calling retrofit create and passing this service name. So whenever we want to get a dev byte service, since this is object like a static class, dev byte network dot dev bytes will be referring to this dev byte service. Okay, makes sense? So this is the old way how we get an instance of dev byte service. Now, since we are not going to do that, we'll be using retrofit in order to fulfill our instances, or in order to provide those things for us. How do I format this? Okay, so now we don't have something to provide a dev byte service. We need to create it. We need to have it instantiated by us. Okay, so in order to create a dev byte service, we need retrofit. Okay, so previously in this line we have created a what do you call retrofit instance. So whenever the dev byte service is required by a retrofit instance, since it is created earlier on in here, we have a retrofit instance. You can see that by their name, okay, class name. So when we refer a retrofit instance, this retrofit instance that we are asking is going to be provided by this function. Okay, that is the injection part. So we need a retrofit. Since we have already a registered one, this instance will be injected to here. Okay, you don't have to create a new retrofit instance and pass it everywhere. This will take care of that. Okay, this is a little bit confusing. Why? Because you can't see injection like happening, like arrow is coming here. But believe me, since we have created the retrofit and we are asking one in our function, the dependency injection framework, hilt in this case, will inject a retrofit from here. Okay, and using this retrofit instance, we can call the create method and pass the dev byte service, and we will get a new dev byte service. Okay, so this is dependency injection in action. So you don't have to create a retrofit instance anywhere else. Say, for instance, you have another service that you need to call. So you just copy this and you maybe something like service 2. I'm not defining anything else in here. So as long as these annotations are in place, provider and we don't need singleton in here. If you like the singleton service, you can have. But let's say we want another service to be created, but we need retrofit. By using this, it will be automatically referring to this. It is referred by this name, the class name itself. So we are expecting a type of retrofit, and since we have something like that under that name, it will be injected in here. Okay. So if you have more and more, you just have to add it and inject it. I hope that makes sense. So this is one way of injecting some dependencies to another place. So all you have to do is in the method, you have to define the type that you are interested in. If that type, okay, remember it carefully. If that type is registered, if that type is provided somehow, it will get injected to here. Okay, otherwise it won't get injected. Okay, if I have this if I have these commented out or not provided, this will be a null section. Okay, because we haven't provided an instance of retrofit, then this injection will not happen. Okay, make sense? It will take a little bit time to get used to this, but this is the, how do I say, this is the simplest form of that I can teach you guys. If you have any other questions, just ask. But let's move on. Otherwise, we won't be able to get this dev byte service in our view model. Okay. So we have our main view model now completely broken because now we can't access the dev byte service like this because it is no longer there. So what we have to do, we have to get an instance of the dev byte service. Okay, in here, as you can see, there are a couple of ways that we can get the dev byte service in place. So we get the retrofit service by calling in here, like passing as function. But for classes like view models, that is not going to be an option. Okay, we will see how we can inject the dev byte service in here without a problem. Okay, let's see. Methods. Database. I think I'm the binding. Injection here. Let me search. Okay. So we need a dev by service here. Okay. So what we can do is we can have uh, a view. We can have an injection around here. It's going to be simple. So in order to make sure this view model knows about hilt, we have to introduce another annotation, hilt view model. Okay, this annotation is required, otherwise hilt won't do their job, or hilt won't inject anything that you will find in here. Okay. Um, so we will be providing constructor based injection. Okay, this one we call, if you go here, this is what we call a method based injection. By referring the variable name in the method, we call this method based injection, or in here simply we can say function based injection. These things works pretty well because we have instances registered and so on and so forth. It goes without an error. But in here we can't inject this dev byte service within this function. Okay, but what we can do is we can inject that into our constructor. Okay, we will be using annotation called inject. Okay. Inject. Inject is coming from Java inject. Okay, let me create the constructor as well, otherwise it won't work. Inspection. So I am using this inject annotation, and I have to inject using the constructor. So what I am interested in is private val dev byte. What is the service name again? Retrofit service, dev byte service. So I am interested in dev byte service. And I will name dev byte service right around here. Okay, so what I have done in here is rather than calling the static method, right now I have introduced another what you call annotation, and I have passed what I need to get injected in here. Okay, so I am interested in dev byte service, and I can say private variable dev byte service. So even though we are not creating one, this inject and this hilt view model, what it will do is it will find dev byte service instance within the app modules. You can see that within our database API module, we have registered a dev byte service. Okay, we have provided a dev byte service. So this is provided in hilt. Now, when we want to refer it, we can simply say at inject dev byte service. Then the created module, created dev byte service will get injected into this. Okay, you don't have to create the service, you don't have to do anything. Since we have created already using hilt, you can just refer it. So now what you have to do is you can say dev byte service get placed. Okay, since we have injected this service will work as it was before. Okay, let's see whether we have breaked anything. Probably it won't work for the first time. Okay, unable to process main new model because com.mbed and dev byte service could not be resolved. Okay, so injection did not go as planned. Let's see what we can do about it. So you can see that injection processing was unable to process. So this one, actually this one, main view model. because the dev service, the dev service that we are interested in, could not be resolved. That means, as we expected, the dev service did not get injected. Okay, this app module, app database, these things, as even though we have declared these things, seems to be not perfect. So we might be missing some other configuration. Let's see what we can do about that. Okay, probably I am missing or adding these app modules. Okay, the registration of modules I haven't done. There should be a configuration. Let me get on that. Yeah, I can find that. Movie application, probably. Application I have registered. Binding, not there. Services, okay. Probably somewhere in the application itself. Module I have provided that as well. Yeah, did I miss anything? No. Data item resources. Oh, there is one thing I can't remember. Let me see if I can. I create the application, right? Okay, that is done. I also created the here Android app. Okay, that is done. Let me see what I have missed. First, okay, activity is registered within the activity, and we can define the Android endpoint. That is okay. Let me clean Android. Let's see. Build, clean the project, and try to run it again. Okay, duplicate class found. This is something new. I think the hilt one is completed. There is duplication on here. View model lazy only lazy module. I think two different classes are trying to access. I think we have to fix this. Let me see how we can get that. Most probably when I introduce, let me see. There's a This is a Kotlin version of your human life generation. Life cycle. Let's see. There's a dependency here. As most of them are complaining. Android life cycle view model. Probably with this and the hilt version that I'm using for sure. Let me check whether this version is available on life cycles. Should be. Go for see now. These things, these kind of things are pretty normal. That can happen anytime, anywhere. Okay, let's try to run it again. Sync is, I think the version is not compatible with that. 3.1 sync now. Okay, that is okay. Let's see official documentation. What did I have to say? Probably I need to exclude one. Yeah. Life cycle view model 2.5.1. Signal. Okay. Did it break? Or yeah. What is the issue? Cannot create instance of main view model. Yes, no argument constructor. Okay, let's see. So there were one issue. One issue is that the life cycle live data, it did not work as expected because of the version incompatibilities. Now, this is like a common thing that we will see. Okay, there is That happens every time when we are trying to do introducing incompatible libraries. So all you have to do is like do a small Google search and try to come up with compatible versions. In this scenario, the hilt one is not compatible with 3.1 but 5.1. So that was one of the issues that was resolved. And the what do you call the issue with the earlier one, that not creating the injection and everything, it was due to the code, as I mentioned earlier. Hilt is generating code on compile time. Okay, so I need to clean that up. Sometimes there are old build directories that interfering with our work, so we need to clear that up. So we can go to build and clean project. That will clean out any existing. And if I try to play, run it again, the injection issue, the compile time issue was gone. But right now what we are having is a runtime issue. Okay, not a compile time issue, but a runtime issue. We have to troubleshoot it. Let's do it. Lang initial UI main view has 0 argument constructor. Okay. New factory instance. Probably when we are defining the view model, it should be changed. Let me try to resolve that as well. Let's see how we can resolve. Super on create. This is defining. Okay, I think there are a couple of missing things that we need to do since we have changed the way that we are doing. Let's see, let's go one by one. Let's go to the fragment. Okay, so what you guys can see that the view model was instantiated by the view model provider, as you can see in here. And I think this is no longer valid since we are creating the main view model using this service injection as well. So we might need to find another way to do that. And one thing that I have found is that I need to add annotation, Android endpoint. That means this is hiltable, okay, or provided by Hilt. And one other thing that I will see that is is the way that we are doing that view model private value view model. Oops. Oh. View model. View model is okay. Where the view model is coming from? Android X view models. think this is not working. I think this is the old way of doing that. Yeah, let me check. So we need to come in another way, but let me check whether we can do like this. Let it, and this works. If that works, I think this will be only thing that we need to provide. Let's see. If not, we have to find another way. No, it seems to be working. We need to have the Android entry point. Okay, moment of truth. So what we have to do is I will clean. If you guys can remember, we call the title. It should come. So false error. It is not coming. Android Jetpack emoji. I think this one is the title, right? If I go to the URL, I can't remember actually whether what was there. Model. Where can I find that thing? Retrofit service. Now it is not there. We have to go to dependency injection, API module. There you go. And let me get URL right. And there. Let's see if I can remember. Yes, under the videos, it's containing Android Jetpack emoji. Android Jetpack room. If I change this in fragment, let's say, for example, 0 is Android Jetpack 0. If I put it 1, it should say Android Jetpack colon room. Okay, let's see whether it works. And I'm not lying to you guys. Main fragment, no errors found, Android Jetpack room. Okay, so that means our application is working perfectly as it was. The only difference is that we have done that we have introduced dependency injection to our application. Okay, all the other things remain same. The functionality wise, we have done no change in here. We have only introduced dependency injection into our application. We have created the retrofit service as a dependency, and we have injected within our application. As you can see, we haven't used the database module yet, but in the next lecture, I think we will be combining these two, and we will see how this dependency injection will help us with the MVVM pattern and with combining these two into a one service. Okay, right now what we have done is we introduce the view model and inject pattern into our application. So we don't no longer create instance here and there. There is a clear cut of dependency injection where it is these things happening and how these things are provided. So we will get into the app module later on when we talk about the database itself. But for now, you guys should get a clear idea on how we have created a singleton out of the retrofit and how we have inject that in our view model. Okay. Hope this makes sense. Anyone have any doubts regarding this section, this session? I mean, we have a lot to cover. These are like really advanced topic. Even if you don't get it by one go, that is totally fine. Even I struggle a lot finding proper documentation, why these annotations are there. I might be forgetting one things, and lot of things going on. It's pretty normal if you don't get this, but time to time, when you master these things, when you have failed so many times, you can understand. Okay, this is what happened. Okay, this is that. This is why this is happening. So as you can see, I make mistakes. Okay, the main reason behind that making me mistakes is these things update fairly well. Okay, the MVVM pattern that I have taught last semester is not the same because everything updates. So we have to come into a solution or resolution where we need to find um, uh, it's going to be the same thing. Somebody is asking to push this code. What I'll do is I will push this right now, so you guys can see, use it. What is this again? Can't remember the place. Was in Android project. There we go. Do I have a terminal? Yeah. Git status, git and yeah, git commit. That hilt. Okay. All right. It's going to be the same URL that I have shared with you guys. So now I have committed the changes. It will be a single commit right now. The code is a little bit dirty. I can't remember why it is not organizing import. I like to do it every time, but I can't remember the show. Wait a second. Oh, okay. Sure. Let's see. In fact, there is no. Anyhow. Okay, anyhow. So my advice is for you guys is now almost everything is with MVVM, at least most of the basic concepts that you will need is here. So practice. Next thing is practice. Perhaps if you are really interested in, since we have a singleton of database provider, get the database related stuff within the application, try to insert something and do some changes. Especially when you are doing that, make sure the DAO layer, this one, the interface for this DAO, video DAO, you can also make it what do you call injectable, or if you don't like, you can leave it as it is, but it is easy to make a DAO out of this. Okay. Yeah, any questions? I think I have pushed the code. Anything other than that? Yes. So whenever we are using this video DAO, you can easily inject that anywhere else, like we have done the dev by search. Okay, practice. That's my thing. Any questions up until now? No? Okay, let me stop recording. Stop sharing. And stop recording.